All right, so for our assignment on the central dramatic argument, um, we are going to choose some stories that we know and love, and we're going to try to analyze those stories for a central dramatic argument. So if you've watched part one and part two, you know that the CDA is best analyzed through your understanding of the Hegelian dialectic, right? A thesis and antithesis that are put into conflict with one another that create a synthesis and unity at the end of the story. Um, you have these five concepts, um, which are explored through the conflict and relationships within the piece. And for those concepts, what you want to do is you want to identify where they all fall sort of in the trajectory of your character's story arc. So your character begins in stasis, that's here at the beginning. And um, somewhere between the beginning and the middle, they are jarred out of stasis, and now they have to choose to enter into conflict with a system of beliefs that will test their ideology, their antithetical, untrue ideology. Because as the author, you're arguing from a perspective of truth, and your character believes the untruth at the beginning of the story. And then from there, you are going through conflict, forming relationships, and at the very end, you get to that point of catharsis where you let go of your old antithetical beliefs and you embody that thesis, that central dramatic argument in your new actions. And only through your actions do you receive the reward from the author as a character, in that now you get to have a new stasis where you are back to living comfortably, but only in that you have embodied the truth of the central dramatic argument. So for our assignment today, I'd like to do this. I would like for you to, after having watched our flipped classroom videos, and taking notes, I'd like for you to find three stories, any stories, TV, movies, books, songs, video games, something with a narrative, something with storytelling. And I'd like you to use your new knowledge of the central dramatic argument to analyze those stories. So I'm going to do an example with you right now. All right, so here is a movie that came out a few years ago. All Pixar movies are nearly flawless in how they do their storytelling. I could go on, but they're amazing. Inside Out, right? So it's the story of this 11, 12-year-old girl who moves from her comfortable life in Minnesota, I think, to San Francisco. And so she is in stasis. And here, let's put that in there. A 12, I think she's 12-year-old girl moves from Minnesota to San Fran and deals with the emotional toll of growing up, being in a new school, dealing with puberty, right? Probably that too, puberty, etc. So that's kind of what it's about, right? Yeah, and so for my analysis of the CDA, I'm going to think about it this way. I'm going to think about what's the thesis of Inside Out. Let's see. So she's got lots of different emotions inside her, like we all do. Sometimes her emotions are happy. In fact, up to that point in her life, she'd experienced mostly joy, right? Sometimes she's angry, sometimes she's scared, sometimes she's grossed out, and sometimes she's sad. In the movie, sadness kind of takes over as her main emotion, and she falls into a sort of depression. She gets angry more often now, especially that joy is out of the picture, trying to reclaim those memories of joy for herself. And so at the end of the film, she has now replaced her sort of joy only inner world, right? Her psychological and emotional world is replaced with a more complex psychological and emotional world. We've taken those old emotions, those childlike emotions, and we've replaced them with more mature emotions, a more mature psychology. So, so her thesis at the beginning is that let's see, how about life is all joy, or like joy is the best emotion, and we should avoid sadness. Yeah, right? Like for a little kid, you're always trying to avoid sadness, right? Like a 10-year-old kid like doesn't want to be sad. They want to be happy and excited and find joy in things, and that makes sense. And a lot of times their parents are, sort of only doing that for them. They're only trying to give them the happiest possible experiences all the time, right? It's an avoidance of reality, of sadness and anger and disgust and fear, and it is that focus on that centering of joy in a young child's life, and at some point that changes. And so for Inside Out, that change is the central dramatic argument, I think. So the argument the author is making, the antithesis, is that let's see. So you have to experience all emotions. You have to be able to experience. One must embrace all of their emotions to grow, mature, and realize their most complete self. Yeah, so the thesis starting out is joy, 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 joy. Only joy. Avoid anger, avoid disgust, avoid fear, avoid sadness, right? Those four things. The antithesis, the antithesis, is one must embrace all of their emotions in order to grow, mature, and realize the most complete self. That feels like the central dramatic argument to me. And so I would say that, I mean, in and out, or Inside Out. So yeah, so I guess let's just go through that explanation of what happened, right? Like the main character is living a life of comfort and joy until she is uprooted by a family move across the country. Living in her new home, she is uncomfortable. I'd say she's uncomfortable. She's unhappy. And she begins to act out both with her parents and at school. Her internal emotional and psychological world is thrown out of balance, right? But really, it's not out of balance. Before it was out of balance. When she was all joy all the time, there's no balance there. So it's thrown out of balance, quote unquote. And through, through overcoming obstacles, both internal and external, she finds new equilibrium, where all of her emotions have a place and a role in her life. That's pretty good, I think. I think that's it. How many words is that, though? That can't be 100, right? Tools, word count, 80. All right. So we'll say 50 words maybe. So that's it. So I want you to find the thesis, find the antithesis, the antithesis, and then summary of the CDA. And then a summary of the central dramatic argument as it plays out in the story. I call it that. That's what I want you to do. So there are 3 sections down here, story 1, story 2, and story 3. Do this on your own for these. And again, it can be any story. It can be an episode of your favorite anime. It can be a book. It can be a video game. It can be a song. I just want you to start thinking about storytelling, thinking about narrative, and thinking about the reason that these stories exist, the aspect of the human condition that they are exploring and how, and what arguments the authors are making for the truth about humanity, the truth about who we are as human beings. Because really being able to understand that is going to allow you to better understand storytelling in general, be more empathetic, and be a better writer when the time comes where you want to write something in fiction, and now you understand best how to build a story from a theme, from a central dramatic argument. And that is it. All right, everybody, have fun with this. Contact me if you have any questions or need any clarification, and otherwise have a wonderful rest of your day.